Hello everyone. In this video we'll be taking a look at this admittedly uninteresting desktop PC from the late 2000s, the Lenovo ThinkCentre M58 small form factor. I found this machine at a local e-waste facility a few months ago and thought about giving it a new home, because you all know what they say about old PCs being a blank canvas. No, well, people should say it because it's true. Old PCs can be shockingly useful, from running old applications to playing media and even console emulation. But I have bigger plans for this one. You see, for some reason more and more recently, I've been needing a machine to run old Mac applications. While I have some older Macs, none are particularly ideal. You see, they all use Apple's SuperDrive slot-loading optical drive, which I simply hate. I have never had one that worked properly. In my experience, all they ever do is pull in the disk, make some god-awful sounds, and spit it out 2 minutes later without the disk having recognized at all. If one of you knows what is causing this problem or any potential fixes, please go ahead and leave a comment. I would be delighted to hear. So with this old Lenovo, I want to make a sort of vintage Hackintosh. It would certainly meet all of my needs for that type of machine: a standard optical drive which can be swapped out, plenty of USB, the ability to run Windows or Linux, obviously, and it doesn't cost me a penny. Let's get started by looking at the machine itself. It's technically a small form factor machine, so of course it isn't nearly as big as a lot of typical PC towers. Interestingly, on the front of the machine it has a sticker detailing its specs. To me, this suggests this machine was at one point owned by some sort of business or institution, and the sticker was used for cataloging the machine. Along the front bezel, you can see the optical drive, and below that is a blanking plate, presumably for an optional card reader. Below that is the power button, and power and hard drive activity lights, audio in and out, and 2 USB ports. On the rear of the machine, it offers a wide array of connectors and ports for our connecting and porting pleasure. From the left to right, it gives us an Ethernet jack, 6 USB 2.0 ports, an eSATA port, otherwise known as the port no one used, a display port, and a DE15 VGA port for connecting to a monitor, a DE9 serial port, and your typical audio in and out jacks. Above the I/O section, you can find a Kensington lock slot, a second serial port, and the IEC power inlet for our power supply. When I set up the machine and tested it out, it worked straight away and booted into Windows 7. But the 250GB Maxtor hard drive sounded like, well, a school bus on a dirt road, so I knew that needed to be replaced. Opening the machine is extremely simple. We just press in these 2 release tabs on the side of the case, and it lifts up like the hood of a car, revealing the inside of the case. What I noticed immediately was this bar on the top of the lid. When a lock is installed into the Kensington slot, it pushes this bar forward to block the release mechanism. I was worried that this would accidentally seize up and cause the case to lock, so I removed the bar. You just pull off the spring, and the bar can be taken off the top. I also went ahead and lubricated the release tabs. Looking at the internals, you'll notice that much of it is blocked by the optical drive, but the entire front of the computer can be rotated forward and out of the way to allow easy access to the rest of the motherboard, including the RAM slots. I also noticed below the optical drive, there's this metal frame where the card reader would sit. The machine currently has 4GB of RAM installed. I attempted to upgrade it, but no matter what stick of RAM I installed, the machine refused to post. The 2 1GB sticks are from the factory, and the other 2GB stick added after the fact by the previous owner is from HP. So I've come to the conclusion that this machine only accepts OEM memory modules. Fortunately, however, 4GB of memory will be plenty for the moment. Onto the hard drive, and replacing it couldn't be easier. Just squeeze the blue loop at the top and lift the carrier out, being sure to unplug the cables. To remove the drive from the carrier, we just squeeze the sides of it like so, and the drive will just come out. I've decided to replace the hard drive with the spare 700GB Seagate I've had lying around. I'm not going to put in an SSD or anything. This isn't a computer I'll be using every day, so a mechanical drive will be sufficient. While I was in here, I decided I would go ahead and replace the thermal compound on the CPU. Lenovo has made this very easy as well. The heatsink comes out very easily. We simply lift up on this arm right next to it, and it lifts out. As I expected, the 11-year-old thermal paste has changed states of matter and is now a solid. I removed it using alcohol and reapplied some Arctic MX4 before replacing the heatsink. One other thing that will be required before we can get macOS installed on this machine: the graphics. Unfortunately, the integrated graphics of the Core 2 Duo E8400 processor boasted by this machine are not supported in macOS, so we'll need to install a supported GPU. The Lenovo is kind enough to supply us with one low-profile PCIe X16 slot, so I went on eBay and purchased an inexpensive AMD Radeon HD 8490 and yeah, it didn't work. Completely incompatible. The operating system would run at an incredibly low resolution, and all of the animations were completely broken, and opening Apple's System Profiler would crash the computer. So, needless to say, it was completely unusable. I honestly don't know why I expected it to work at all. So I went on eBay again, and just my luck, I found an auction for an open box AMD Radeon HD 6450, which I won for only $5, which was less than I spent on the first card, and it should be fully supported. I must say, I sure am happy I got this with the box, so we can appreciate the early 2010s cheesy GPU packaging. What is it even supposed to be? Some sort of undead knight? Who knows? ASUS, inspiring innovation, persistent perfection. It's like they couldn't decide which alliterative tagline to go with, so they used both. 0 decibel cooling, because there isn't a fan. Inside the box, we have the card with the low-profile bracket set already fitted. I found the standard height bracket in the smaller box. Unfortunately, the original documentation and driver disk are no longer with us, but hey, at least we got both brackets. I mean, they always seem to get lost. Installing the card is no trouble at all. We flip up the blue card retaining bracket and remove the port covers. We'll seat the card into the slot and install the VGA bracket in the slot next to it. And we'll return the blue retainer to the locked position. Now it's time for the fun part: software installation. Yay. At first I didn't know which version of macOS I wanted to install on the system. Of course, this is an older machine, so the more recent releases like Big Sur or Catalina probably wouldn't be the best choice speed-wise, so I eventually settled on OS X 10.9 Mavericks. Looking back on it, OS X Mavericks was kind of an odd release. Announced at WWDC 2013 and made available the following October, Mavericks was the first version of OS X to be made available as a free upgrade. It was also the first release to be named after a location in California rather than a big cat, as had been the convention with all previous releases. In terms of features, Mavericks went pretty light, primarily advertising improvements in battery life. It was the final version of OS X to use the Aqua-themed user interface. Curiously, at the same event, Apple had also announced iOS 7, which replaced the skeuomorphism with a new flat design language. For those wishing for a similar design to come to the Mac, they would need to wait for OS X Yosemite, released in 2014. In order to set up macOS on our PC, we'll need a bootloader environment to start up and emulate some of the functionality of a Mac. I could have gone with the new OpenCore bootloader, which can still boot into discontinued versions of OS X, but I thought it would be a little bit more interesting to choose the more period-accurate Chimera bootloader, which probably isn't the best choice, but again, this isn't a machine I plan to use every day, and I might switch to OpenCore later on, but Chimera will do for now. In order to set up our installer with Chimera, we'll need an already existing installation of macOS. I'm using macOS 11 Big Sur, but any relatively recent version should work. All the files mentioned will be linked in this video description. We'll start by obtaining the Mavericks installer. Unfortunately, Apple no longer makes older versions of OS X available through the App Store, so a workaround is required. Fortunately, a copy of the App Store installer of Mavericks has been preserved on the Internet Archive, so I went ahead and downloaded it. Interestingly, all of the files are in a .app file. Right-click on it and choose Show Package Contents. Find the zip file and extract it. Move the installer into the Applications folder. Next, we'll need to download the Unibeast USB creator for Mavericks and the Multibeast installer for Mavericks from Tony Mac X86. You may need to create an account for access to the download. We'll also need to download the Voodoo HDA audio patcher version 2.8.8. To create the installer, we'll need a USB flash drive of at least 8 GB in size, connect it to the computer, and go to Applications, Utilities, and open Disk Utility. Find the USB drive in the list of devices, select it, and click Erase. I'll name my drive Mavericks Installer, and set the format to macOS Extended Journaled, and set the scheme to MBR. Click Erase. Be aware, this erases the drive. Yes! Once it's finished erasing, you can go ahead and quit out of the disk utility. Now we'll open Unibeast. I'll click Continue, 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 Agree. Select the flash drive, continue, select the installer, continue, and oh no. Yeah, it gives us an installer incomplete error message. I was initially confused as to what caused this issue, and I believe it has to do with macOS signing certificates, I think, but I can't be sure. I was looking into this issue and stumbled upon this video that provides a solution to this problem, and unlike other videos on the topic, this one actually works. I'll link that video in the description. Go ahead and download the file linked from that video. Extract the files and open the Applications folder. Find the Mavericks installer. Right-click on it and select Show Package Contents and open the Contents folder. Delete the _code signature and _MAS receipt folders if present, and empty the trash. Copy the two folders from the downloaded file into the installer. Now open System Preferences and choose Date and Time. Click the lock and enter your password to modify the settings. Uncheck Set Date and Time automatically. Now we need to set the date back to 2010. The date that I chose is November 30th, 2010. Now open Unibeast again and continue through the installer. This time, after the installer select screen, it should continue as it should. Don't select any of these options. Now click Install and enter your password. It will begin creating the installer. It took about half an hour to complete. Once it's finished, copy the Multibeast and Voodoo HDA applications to the USB drive. And we're done! The flash drive is now ready for use. Just remember to return the date and time settings to normal by checking the box. Now, I'll turn my attention to the Lenovo. This machine is slightly odd in that to enter the BIOS or invoke the boot menu, you press Enter on startup and then choose what you want from a menu. Cool. I started by entering the BIOS and I disabled the serial ports. I've heard that having serial ports enabled can prevent macOS from booting, but I don't know if that's true or not. But better safe than sorry. I restarted the machine and booted from the USB drive. On the Chimera screen, I chose the Mavericks installer. It booted up perfectly, and in high resolution. Before installing, the hard drive must be formatted for use with OS X. So I opened the disk utility, only to find out that the hard drive's smart status was bad. Lovely. Well, in my experience, I haven't found the smart status to be a particularly great indication of a drive's health. I've had so-called bad drives continue to work for over a year, and some would even revert back to verified status. And this drive sounds a heck of a lot better than that Mac Store disaster that previously inhabited this machine, so it will probably be good for now at least. Unfortunately, Disk Utility doesn't let you modify the partition map of a bad drive, so I'll have to format it manually. I'll quit out of the Disk Utility and open the terminal from the Utilities menu. In order to format the drive, you need to know what disk identifier it has. To do this, type disk-util-list to display a list of all of the disks connected to the computer. In my case, the internal drive is /dev/disk0. That's the drive we want to format. To format the drive, you need to enter this long command. disk-util erase disk jhfs plus hackintosh /hd/dev/disk0. It looks complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Disk-util is calling up the disk utility program. Erase disk is instructing it to erase an entire drive. JHFS Plus refers to the file system macOS Extended Journaled. Hackintosh /HD refers to the name that we'll give the new drive. The backslash is to indicate a space in the name, and /dev/disk0 refers to which disk specifically is being modified. This is what was seen when we ran the list command. Press enter, the drive will format. Once it's finished erasing, we can quit the terminal and continue installing macOS like normal. I'll click continue and agree to the terms and conditions that I definitely read. I'll select the drive above and click install. Installation took around 20 minutes. Once it finishes installing, we'll restart. The bootloader hasn't yet been installed on the local drive, so in order to boot, we'll need to have the USB drive again. Use the boot menu to start up from it, and at the Chimera menu, we'll want to choose the local drive. Once it starts, you can set up macOS as if you're on a real Mac. Once you're at the desktop, open the USB drive and run Multibeast. On the Quick Start page, I chose EasyBeast. This may have been a mistake, which I'll get to later. On the drivers page, we'll select the Network tab and check the box corresponding to the Intel E1000E controller. Now to finish, head to the Build page and select the local hard drive from the drop-down box and click Install. Click Agree, enter the password, and Multibeast will install the bootloader and drivers on the hard drive. Now we won't need the flash drive to start up. Once it's finished, restart the computer. Now we'll install the audio driver. Open the Voodoo HDA installer and mash the Next button. Once it's finished, restart the computer once again. The audio should now work. Unfortunately, the Voodoo HDA patcher doesn't enable HDMI audio, which is a little unfortunate because this is the only method to get working audio with this motherboard chipset. But for me, it's fine. HDMI audio isn't something that I tend to use, so for my purposes, this will work just fine. And with that, we're done. We now have a fully functional Lenovo ThinkCentre M58 running Mavericks. I must say, it was shockingly easy to set up, and performance seems pretty decent as well, with the machine identifying itself as a 3,1 2008 Mac Pro. It won't set the world on fire or anything, but the operating system seems reasonably responsive, and for the very basic tasks I'll use it for, it will be more than sufficient. I know some of you all really like synthetic benchmarks, so I ran the freeware version of Geekbench on it, and it scored 4,165, whatever that means, which appears to be pretty on par with stock 3,1 Mac Pros. The machine also appears to run very reliably with few, if any, crashes. The only issue that I've found has been with wake from hibernation. The machine won't wake up at all and remains hibernating. Looking back, I probably chose the wrong option on the Quick Start page of Multibeast, which is completely fixable, but for now I decided to simply disable hibernation by going into the terminal and running sudo pmset-a hibernate mode 0, and that should take care of it. For fun, I thought I'd take advantage of the nifty little VGA port that comes equipped on our state-of-the-art HD 6450 and connect it to CRT. It looks delightfully cursed. I love it. In the future, I might want to first of all replace the hard drive with one that's faster and isn't failing slowly, find memory that works, and maybe get this machine up to 8 GB. I might install a more recent operating system, perhaps El Capitan or High Sierra. One thing that's probably for sure either way is switching to OpenCore. I think that would probably greatly increase the stability and speed of the system and would probably eliminate the wake from sleep issue completely. Chimera is great, but there's a reason why we stopped using it. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I'd say I've learned 2 very valuable lessons today. Number 1, don't take random old eBay graphics cards and expect them to work in random old computers running random old versions of macOS. And 2, a fairly average old PC can be an excellent Mac. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.